Okay, so basically, this accident that caused the ministry, basically, we had a knock on the door, and it was 2 in the morning, and those knocks are never good. But when we opened the door, my husband was with me, and as soon as I heard it's a bad report, I don't receive bad reports because God says I'm supposed to think on what's good, pure, lovely, the good reports. So it's like, yeah, that's for you. And I just like went over here and I was like, okay, Lord, what's going on? What are we doing here? Because I need to hear from God, because whatever that is that the world's throwing at me, I don't take part in that. I just, I'm not doing that. So God told me that he's going to live and not die and declare the works of the Lord. So I said, okay. So when he got done at the door, that's what I told him. You want to?
Yep, they had told us we needed to, she didn't want to hear it, but we needed to get to the hospital in Lawnwood right away because they had flown our son out, and that he most likely would not make it. So, so with that, she told me when we got in the car, she goes, well, God the word rose up in me, declare the works of the Lord, he will live and not die, and declare the works of the Lord. She goes, before we even put the key in the car, she goes, so let's declare it. So we declared it. And then what they had messed up on was the son that was actually in the accident. So we weren't going to tell anybody, but if the cops hadn't have messed up, 3 other sons of ours wouldn't have known, because we were in a warfare against the enemy, against what was going on. And the less doubts, the better off you are, because you know where you're standing in the word God gives you. So, well, we ended up having to call my youngest son's wife, and you're better at this than me.
Okay. So, yeah, basically, I let him know, okay, this is where we're standing, this is what God said, and that's what we just called her and said, listen, he's been in an accident. And so we picked her up, and then I told her, this is where we're standing, this is, God said he's going to live and not die. We're not listening to anything else, so just, we're all on the same page, we're standing in faith. There's nothing wavering here. And so as we're driving, she's like, but what about the baby? And I was like, well, they didn't say anything about a baby. And I said, you know what, call him. And when she called him, he was where he was supposed to be, at his other brother's house, because she was working late that night, and so he was where he was supposed to be. So at that point, we realized it was Michael. And so now, all the brothers knew. So now it's like, okay, well, of course, they're all going to meet us at the hospital. So as each one showed up, I just kept telling them, this is what God said, this is where we're standing, we're not moving. And that's it. And so it was a 5-hour surgery. And during that, we had plenty of time to get into a place of rest through prayer and just believing God and standing together. And
Yeah, and then we, when the doctor had come out, he pretty much told us what the cops had told us at the door, that there was no hope. Pretty much get his affairs in order, do what you can, because he had totally crushed the whole side of his head in, and there was no bone left there. He had shattered the whole left side of his face. It was all fragmented, and there was just no hope. And so knowing what God had said, I'm trying to get him to where God's already got us. So I'm like, all right, so what's next? And what's next? And it took me probably 15 minutes to get the what's next at him, because we already had the what's next from God. So I'm trying to get the what's next out of him. So I said, so I started laying on the questions. Where are we going to get the skull? See, and you say, it's gone, it's just shattered, it's a mess. He goes, well, we don't know, we don't do that here. So he goes, we'll just have to conquer that bridge when it comes. He goes, but it's not going to come. I said, well, and besides, I said, and he goes, well, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 other surgeries. And then he was like, finally looked at me, and I was like, all right, come on. I said, what's going to be next? And he says, if he lives, he goes, which I doubt, he says he will have no quality of life and he will definitely have no use of his right side. He says, I bet. So he was pretty much trying to convince us to pretty much pray that he just went home, that there was just no hope. But God had already told us different. So we knew he's a photo bomber. And so when we were done talking with him there, the doctor, my oldest son, he wouldn't go in the room with us, but it was time to go in and see what was what was in there. So me and his two younger brothers, we went in and I looked at him. I said, no matter what we see, I said, we just got to keep strong in the Lord. We got to lift each other up. And I said, we just can't doubt. We can't waver. So when we went in there, that's what we saw on the poster. We saw life support tubes, you name it, bells, whistles, everything jingling away. And just the trauma and the atmosphere in the room itself, a body after it's gone through that kind of surgery and all the meds and all that, it's just like, it's almost like it's just humming and raised up off the bed. It's like, I guess the easiest way to describe it was like you were almost just staring at death. And not in a good death way. It wasn't no peace there. So we just stayed in the prayer. We brought peace. Yeah, we brought peace with us. So we did our prayers, this, that, and the other thing, and then Mama came in the room later, and then the next day they came in and they started doing everything that I was talking with the one doctor about that he didn't want to do. He didn't think was going to happen. So they took him to do a CAT scan on his face to see about all these fragments, all these pieces on what they were going to do. And like I said before, we had told nobody, my whole side of the family, nobody. The only people that knew were his brothers. They were the only ones that knew at this point.
So I got a phone call from a person that I led to the Lord many years ago, and she called me out of the blue. I hadn't spoke to her for at least a couple of years, and she said, Sandy, she said, I don't know what this means, but when I was praying, God was showing me he's knitting the bones back together. And she had no clue. And I'm sitting there saying, oh, okay, well, I'm going to share it with you because obviously you're going to stand with me because, I only wanted people of faith, because most of our family, they would have been like, but what did the doctor say? But what did the doctor say? And it's like, no, you're not getting it. You have to get on our page because we're looking for the miracles, and that's the biggest thing is we have to realize that we're brought up in a world that really, the world is what everybody's used to. And so when we're talking about God said this or I'm going to walk according to the word that or whatever, it's foreign to them. It's just foreign. So for me, I just always found it easier, let's just walk it through. We'll tell everybody about it later. And, of course, everybody's kind of mad at you later. But, I just say to them, well, look, all those weeks of worry you didn't have to have, because now we're done, it's over. But, yeah. More?
Yep. So then she comes and shares that with me, and then the next day, another doctor comes in the room. Well, she gets and she tells us a story, and then the plastic surgeon, he comes in, and then he tells us there'll be no more surgeries for there because they wanted to send him to Miami for 5 other surgeries. For the plastic surgeries. So, he came back in after she got that word, and he says he'll be going nowhere. He goes, all them fragments laid back into place. Everything was back. Everything was back as it should be. So that was that. And then right after that, another doctor comes in the room, one I hadn't seen, and he starts poking around in his belly, on his belly. And I'm like, can I help you? And he says, I'm looking for his skull. I said, his skull? Why would it be in there? And he says, well, that's where they put them, when they cut a pocket, they put the bone in the belly area, it keeps the skull alive. So I said, well, he don't have one. I said, he shattered his. And he says, oh, that's him. I said, yeah. And they said that they didn't know how he was going to get one. There was nobody here that did that. He goes, well, me and my team just started. He says, and we're going to get him a skull. So God definitely had things lined up. So,
Yeah, right down to having that new doctor and his team coming in so that we would have a skull on there, because there's still people out there that actually have no skull. And so they have to always have a helmet on, but God sent that doctor so that he would have his skull so that he could walk, and not have to have that helmet on. But I mean, God's timing is perfect. When we lean, trust, and rely on him in all things, he's just always so faithful. And when we go to him, he says he will direct our steps. So I just want to encourage all of you, no matter what you're going through, it doesn't matter if it's physical, financial, it does not matter. God is faithful to his word. And so just choose to believe it. Even though it seems impossible, we have a God of impossible who wants to be there and help us. We just need to step out and believe him. And when we believe, then he will bring it to pass, because he will uphold his word. It's his word that we're speaking, and he will always uphold his word. But it's our job to believe it. So, I just want to encourage everybody with that we have a God we can trust. There's many times through our life between leukemia and he had died once during that, and God brought him back. And we have a 30-minute video on YouTube that goes more in detail into all of this. If anybody wants, it's under Williams Tribe Mike's Miracles. But yeah, no, he's.
yeah,
I see you reaching.
yeah. Well, then 2 weeks into this, they have to take him off life support. This is the part where they're saying, yeah, this is pretty much it. And we already know different. They've already been going through the motions, everything that we had talked out, and God had showed us. So they that's what part of that one Flawless is about. So the day they told us they were pulling the plug, that's what God gave her that song. She put that on her iPad and set it on the bed while they were disconnecting him.
Yeah, because
So
he might not breathe.
yep. So we went through that, and then as soon as that was done, then we started weaning him off the meds, because otherwise he was just too doped up to do anything. And it took about 5 of us. I was in the hospital 24/7, and took 5 of us. The help of one of the nurses there, he really helped me out a lot to get him out of bed. But it took 5 of us to get him up on his feet. One, we would start using his legs. Mama would follow with one of them rolling chairs. This way, if he got tired, and we'd sit him down. And they'd put these silly yellow socks on him with the little grippies on the bottom. And it's rough enough trying to get him to walk, because with that skull missing there, his head just always sagged. He just sagged. And he'd see them socks, and he'd look like a flamingo out there in the hallway. We're trying to get him to walk, and he's just trying to tear them socks off. So, but it took about 5 of us. But each day, it almost seemed like each day there was less and less and less people having to help, because he just started taking off. And then he just started doing sit-ups in the bed. I don't know, it seemed like 100 miles an hour all day long, all night long. I was wanting him to put him back on some meds to slow him down, because that's all he wanted to do, and walk. Oh my gosh, we must have walked I don't know how many miles around that hospital, up and down the steps, this, that, and the other, before they got us out of there to rehab. So we get him up to rehab.
Oh, yeah. So we got up to rehab, and they seemed to think that he should be in a wheelchair. And I said, oh, no. We put him in a wheelchair once here at Lawnwood to get him outside. They said we had to. And we almost couldn't come back at it because he was like a little kid. He just wanted to play. He wanted to ride, you know. And so when we got up there and we were like, no, we're walking with him. We have the belt on him and everything. And they're like, oh, no, well. And I said, well, you better go change your policy because I'm not going backward, you know, for you guys. This will be the shortest visit ever. And no, so I pushed the thing down the hall and they realized I'm not going anywhere near that, and we're just walking. So they adjusted for us their rules, seeing how he already had the gate belt and everything, and we had been doing it already at the hospital.
Yeah. Well, then, the next day, because that night they seen us do probably about 30 miles around the hallway and up and down the steps, because he just didn't stop. Like in the one video you saw the bed with the screen, that's how he got him into bed. You get him in there, zip it up, and boom. He couldn't get out, because otherwise he's gone. He just gone. So they seen this going on, just our first night there, so they had a big powwow the next day with the doctors, what would be his therapy team and everybody, and they were like, so what do you want us to do for him? He's eating, he's walking, what can we do? Well, at this point, we seen what social interaction was doing for him, because all he's got is me and her, you know, and now he's got the therapists and all this.
Girls, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's God took something different. They not only poured into him what they could, but what God poured from him into them was incredible, because it was just something that they weren't used to, and Mike's hours. Yeah, it was just an awesome experience, but rehab lasted 2 weeks. So 2 weeks. He is med free. There is no meds. He takes what I take in the morning, a daily vitamin. That's what we take. No sleep meds, no dizzy meds, no meds of any form or shape. So, and to give you an idea of what they explained to me, I didn't want to hear it, but they were very insistent on explaining to me the the seriousness of his injury. And I know what a stroke is, because I've lost my stepfather to a stroke, a pretty severe stroke. So they're explaining to me a severe stroke is like a 1 or a 2 bleed that leaves people renderless, speechless, can't function, do nothing on their own, and whatever. And I was like, and they're trying, and they're like, and that's a 1 or a 2 bleed. They said a 2 bleed that normally a stroke victim won't survive. So I'm like, okay. And they looked at me and they said, this was closer to the beginning, and they were like, he had 5. 5. So, God was faithful.
Yes, God was definitely faithful, because he astounded, God just made himself known. They had to come in our room a few times and tell us to turn down the worship music. But, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, when your God is this good, then you have to let the world know. And hopefully some of them will catch on to it and let it transform their life as well, too. Because too often life just comes knocking on our door, and we just receive anything that's there. And that's not God's best for us. God's best for us is, he said, I made you in my image. He's a speaking spirit. He said and he saw. And that's what we're to do. We're supposed to speak into existence what we are called to do. He leads us and guides us in all his ways, and that's where he wants us to be. He doesn't want us just to get rolled over by whatever the world throws at us. He wants us to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not receiving that. You know, I mean, fear is our worst enemy. And when we see fear knocking, trying to get hold of us, we have to recognize it. We have to have we have to be able to notice that that's not God. I follow God. And because of my covenant with him, I'm covered. That has no place here with me. And this is where the rubber meets the road. You know, you have to be able to stand. And having done all to stand, you stand. And that's it. You know, we don't waver because we know our God loves us. We know that he died on that cross and took this for us. So for us to receive things that he took from us, that we don't have to bear them, then it's like saying, well, what'd you do it for? If I'm still going to have to, oh, well, you know, I have to, you know, go get my flu shot or whatever. No, he said, by my stripes, you're healed. So now when we start believing that we are healed, that he did that, and we don't have to be under the subjection of that, but we can come up into the kingdom life and into all that he has for us, because he died to give us this covenant package. We have an inheritance package that he gave us. He said, you know what? I went and I took care of this. I took care of that. I took care of this. Oh, you want to believe in me? Well, here, I give that all to you. And that way you can go and you can help others and to come up out of wherever they are and use the gifts and teach them, you know, make them disciples. We are all children of God. All of us who choose to believe, we're children of God. And God, he's the best father. He's not gonna want less for his kids than you would want for yours. I mean, so some of us to think that, oh, well, you know, God allowed this or allowed that. No, God didn't. God said, I conquered it. I defeated the enemy, and now I'm giving it to you. Now it's up to you. Do you want to walk a defeated life, or do you want to defeat the enemy and walk in victory? Because I've given you the victory. And so that's where we need to just, you know, make that decision, because this way when life comes at us, we're like, oh, no, that's not mine. That doesn't belong to me. Yep.
Yep, because he's called us all to ministry. Matthew 10, 7 and 8. We are all called to preach this message. The kingdom of God is near. And it's nearer now than it was then, because now the kingdom's in you. Because Jesus is the kingdom. So now where does it exist? The kingdom has landed. It is here. Yeah, and what are we to do? We're all to do it. Not just certain ones of us. Yes, certain ones of us are called to do certain things, or we perform better in certain areas, but we're all called to do this. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out the demons. Freely we have been given, freely we give. And that's what we're all called to do. So. The tongue is the rudder. The tongue is the rudder. It sets your course. You're either going to speak life or you're going to speak death. And sometimes bad things happen, but a lot of times if you sit down through your tribulations and your trials and you sit and you think real hard, somewhere in your life you've brought it. You've released something that finally came back. So more often now than ever, I said at times, Lord, has something slipped out that I didn't realize? And I get right away praying for crop failure, because I don't want to reap anything bad that I've sowed. Because I know I've sowed some bad things in my lifetime, and I do pray against them. I do pray for crop failure. So, watch. Even the little wives' tales or the little stories like love you to death, for an example. Don't never love anybody to death. Love them to life. Because them simple little words, simple little words, well, I didn't mean anything by it, but you want to know what? The enemy knows the power of them words. Because what God do? He spoke. And he gave us that power. When we speak, mountains move, things happen. So you got to watch that rudder. Life and death is in that tongue.
Yeah, and through our words, we're either empowering the ministering angels to go and minister life, or we're empowering, Satan's guys to go do whatever we're talking. So you have to realize at some point that words are not just meaningless. They just have it's basically like whatever you send out, it's going to come back to you. If you think of it that way, then you maybe can think about more, well, what am I calling in? What am I calling in? Am I calling in my kids, or my kids, am I speaking life over them? Am I, it's just so important that we teach them as well, that speak good of yourself. I think there's so many people, including myself, that we're always having to have someone like iron sharpens iron. We have to encourage each other that, if you saw yourself the way God sees you, you're his child, and he made each one of you unique and special, and there's no one else like you. And he loves each of you with a love that just, it doesn't end. It doesn't end. And it'll never fail. So if we can just even fathom the love he has for us, it'll change our lives just in that alone. Just understanding the great love that he has for each of us. And then we can learn to trust him, as we're walking through things, and so you want to say anything, Mike?
Yeah.
God's here for everyone, including all y'all. Y'all healed. Y'all healed.
In Jesus' name.
Jesus' name.
I was just looking at him. We're pretty good, right?
Okay.
You got more? Pray us out?
You got it? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we're good.
I asked you. You got more?
I don't know. I think I'm good. There's always more. There's always more. If you want to ask a couple questions.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. One of the things I heard you talk about in the first service was the light and dark areas in the brain coming back. Could you kind of give some detail on that for them? I mean, that really kind of painted a picture for me.
Okay. After they had put the prosthetic on, when they did the scan, it showed where the brain had shrunk, all the black areas where it was all dead, and that was the way it was supposed to remain. I think it was about 6 months. About 6 months later, 5-6 months later, they did a follow-up CAT scan, and the brain grew back in, and all them black areas were now light gray. So.
And I think a lot of that, too, is as soon as they would tell us something negative, we would just say, oh, no, okay, well, they're saying the dark area is bad. All right, we're calling light B. And I even put it up, like, on our Facebook page. I was like, all right, everybody pray light B, because we want all this to come back to life, because our God, he's a giver of life. So we're not going to leave any dead thing in there. God fully restores. He doesn't do it halfway.
Revelations 12:11 says, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of a testimony, right? That's how powerful testimonies are. And thank you guys again for sharing today. I mean, they are just powerful. They transform people. They bring life. And that's what testimonies do. That's what the Word of God does. So thank you guys again so much.